Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Michael Cole. I'm the SVP of Marketing at Everflow, and today I'm super excited to talk about how to deliver e-commerce growth through multiplayer partnerships. I thought this was a really fascinating concept, and I'm really excited to unpack it with Mike today. Mike, can you give the quick introduction for yourself?
Yeah, of course. Mike Mallazzo. I am currently the head of growth at Forum Brands. Forum Brands is a holding company of brands built around the millennial mom that retails both through our own direct-to-consumer websites, on Amazon, and then in most of your favorite stores: Walmart, Target, Chewy, Babylist, et cetera, et cetera. I am something of an outsider to CPG and brand side. I'm originally an investigative journalist by trade, who spent the bulk of my career in both media and technology companies before coming to Forum. So it's been a little bit of a baptism by fire for me, being on the brand side, but I've been here at Forum almost 3 years now.
And how did you end up there? Since that sounds like it's a good transition.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I spent time at a couple different SaaS companies, one called Dynamic Yield, which sold to McDonald's and MasterCard. And then I ran business development for a company called Narrative, now known as Howl, which might be familiar to a lot of your viewers. Tried to help kind of co-found or join the founding team of a media company called Protocol. That company was sold to Axel Springer and eventually folded. So I was ready to kind of try something bold and different. This was sort of late 2021, which was sort of the golden years and glory days of e-commerce roll-ups. I got connected to the super impressive team here at Forum that was building one. I knew the founder a little bit from my college days and figured why not, I was 30 years old at the time, 10 years into doing media and software. I figured why not do something crazy and new, and decided to give it a shot. I was brought on to kind of help originally grow the brands, all of the sort of nascent growth channels that we had off Amazon. So at the time, that was affiliate partnerships. It was beginning the process of selling our products into brick and mortar. As those channels have kind of become more stable state, my job has kind of evolved to be looking at what is the new thing, so to speak, that we can do to drive growth. And the sort of concept of partnering with other brands and multiplayer partnerships is sort of top of mind for this right now, as are, I think, some of the other topics we're going to discuss today.
That's awesome. And can you give like sort of the quick elevator pitch of like sort of what is Forum Brands like unique selling proposition kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it depends at the individual brand level, right? We are a vertically focused roll-up of sort of brands built around millennial mom, like I said, sort of at the outset in our intro. So again, most of our brands differentiate as their own entities, right? We sell a line of premium baby essentials. That was one of Oprah's favorite things, that really wins on the basis of superior ingredients, sort of softest baby essentials you'll find at Temia.com if you're familiar. We own Lolo, which more or less didn't invent, but sort of mainstream the organic tampon market. So, I mean, most of the time our brands kind of stand out in and of themselves. But as a holding company, I would say there are sort of, three things that we do sort of distinctly well. One is that we have a portfolio of truly complementary assets, which I think a lot of people that bought in this space sort of treated this as a financial arbitrage game. And I think we're pretty smart to think about what are some brands that naturally grow together, kind of go together and could exist together on a retail shelf or on a digital shelf. Second, I would say we are, I think, pretty fast to market from an experimentation perspective. We are, if you look at our individual brands, a lot of our brands are among sort of the smaller and most nascent brands on some of the marketplaces that we're on. So we were very early to experiment with Babylist when they started to really expand their first-party wholesale partnerships. A couple of our pet brands have started to scale very nicely on Chewy. So I think we do a good job. We were one of the first brands to get onto Flip when that was kind of the craze in Q4 of last year. So I think we're pretty good at building the sort of logistical and growth acumen to unlock net new marketplaces. And then third, I think we've just been sort of smart about the acquisitions we've made. So that's where I'd say we kind of, sort of differentiate ourselves at the holding company level. But I think to the end shopper, it's really about where our individual brands, try to sort of make their mark in the world.
Yeah, it makes sense. And just out of curiosity, what was Flip?
Flip, yeah. So Flip was a fun app. For those that aren't familiar, is still a fun app. They actually just raised a 9-figure Series C venture round recently. So Flip is trying to kind of compete with TikTok Shop and a lot of the other social commerce platforms out there. They are a standalone app that you can download and shop an array of products from, I think, now thousands of brands. Their main shtick is that they reward users both for uploading UGC and kind of unboxing videos when they receive a product. And they actually reward videos for watching both the organic UGC content and some of the promoted UGC that exists on the platform. So if you scroll through Flip videos, you actually get credits that are redeemable for up to 30% off your purchases on the platform. On the back end, it all fulfills through, either Shopify or Amazon MCF or whatever sort of, kind of core logistics engine that you use. But they had a really, when they raised their Series B round, they were very, very aggressively promoting growth on the platform and giving away literally hundreds of dollars in free credits to people that had very, very large networks and contacts. It was a very, very interesting growth scheme where if you in your iPhone contacts, if you had a reasonably small number of people on the platform, you would get, maybe 30 or $50 to join. But if you were, someone that had thousands of contacts that resembled Flip shoppers, they were giving you hundreds of dollars in free credit. So for us as a brand, it was a great time to be on the platform because a lot of people had, free venture-backed money and were willing to obviously, sort of buy our products at full price. So it's still an evergreen channel for us. We still invest on both the organic and paid side, and it, is a non-trivial part of our business. But I think it was a spot where we sort of benefited from being, quick to market.
That's fascinating. And also always a reminder is that there's affiliate plays in all things, because a lot of what Flip is offering in that situation is traditional proven things around discounts and audiences and sort of leveraging different connections and stuff. So always fascinating to see.
It's affiliate company at its core on the brand side. Mm-hmm. We just basically pay 20% of sales. So it's a guaranteed ROAS channel for us. Now we also invest a little bit in advertising on the platform. But at the end of the day, it's, some people might call it something closer to a drop ship model, but it's a 20% affiliate commission is the way that I think about it, maybe because that's my background. So it is one of these kind of platforms. Flagship is similar as a creator storefront platform that is trying to scale on what I think is fundamentally an affiliate model for brands, which is a hard thing to do as a tech platform. But if it works, it becomes a no-brainer for brands to sign up, right? I get a guaranteed 5x ROAS on this platform. Of course, I'll do that every day.
And very, very proven traditionally with things like Upsell that all scaled quite large by just working on performance basis.
Right.
Cool. So next question, e-commerce, undervalued or overvalued?
Yeah, I actually think e-commerce is correctly valued at the moment in a lot of ways. There's the old sort of saying that in the short term, the market is a gambling machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine. And I think in a lot of ways that's come for e-commerce. E-commerce was obviously in the early 2010s and mid 2010s wildly undervalued in a lot of ways. I don't think a lot of people predicted the seismic sort of wave of online kind of trajectory that would come. Then a ton of venture capital obviously poured into the business. E-commerce companies started to become valued like SaaS businesses, which is fundamentally flawed in a lot of ways. COVID pulled forward e-commerce in some people's minds decades. In the end, it ended up reverting back to the original trend line that e-commerce growth was on before the pandemic. But I think now the market has started to sort of normalized, and you're seeing valuations that make a lot of sense, right? You're seeing great brands get picked up by strategics for sometimes north of 10x EBITDA or 3 to 5x multiples of top line revenue. You're seeing growth stage brands that aren't necessarily brands with a capital B, but are great products that some people might have heard of being valued 2, 3x EBITDA, not trivial, but not like they were maybe 3-4 years ago. And then more interesting, they're seeing a ton of distressed assets, right? Companies that just were built on unsustainable unit economics when cash was cheap. But some of these companies are still exceptional products and exceptional brands and deserve a sort of place in market. But I think if you take these trends together in aggregate, I actually think the market is valuing e-commerce pretty damn close to correctly right now. There's a chance it overcorrects and becomes undervalued again, and some brands may be undervalued. But I think sort of 10 years into the peaks and valleys, the market is more or less right.
Cool. And just curiosity, sort of going off of that, like I was saying that even today, most e-commerce brands, like it's all about like new consumers, and retention, as much as people talk about, is still only like, I don't know, like 15-20% or something like that of like focus for e-commerce. Do you think that that's going to just shift, or is it going to always be like almost all the focus is on new customer versus the second or third purchase?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on obviously the type of brand, right? This
Yeah.
flow will look very different for a subscription heavy brand versus a sort of one time or more commodity purchase. I would argue that the savvier brands don't have that equation, right? If you look at some of the best sort of D2C brands out there right now, some of the highest paid people in their company are their like VPs of retention, and these people are worth their weight in gold. We're interviewing a couple people that came through that road for some like potential consulting arrangements here, and it's really compelling to see what these folks have a right to charge. What I think is really interesting is retention in the context of some of these sort of semi-distressed direct-to-consumer brands, because
Mhm.
what a lot of direct-to-consumer brands that raise venture capital have is massive customer lists. Even if they overpaid to get those customer lists, when cash was cheap and Facebook ads cost a third or half of what they do now, a lot of brands were spending aggressively, and they along the way acquired customers, even if unsustainably. And several of these brands are now sitting on email lists and SMS lists that are in the hundreds of thousands, which is a pretty powerful online audience in any context. But yeah, to your point, I think a number of these brands are not necessarily maximizing the complexity of retention. And if you think about like, there are so many software tools that are built on top of customer acquisition. We're just now starting to see like interesting technology get built on top of Klaviyo and Attentive to really get retention flows that are half as sophisticated as some of the customer acquisition flows out there. So I'd say long-winded way of saying like the brands that are, doing 9 figures in scaling, your HexClass, your True Classics of the world are, world-class retention marketers. But I think a lot of brands that are, either struggling or have had their growth curves kind of stall out. Yeah, I do think a little bit more of a focus on retention over the next 12 to 18 months is going to be where they claw back some dollars.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super fascinating. Cool. So let's hop into some sort of more like long form questions. So
Yep.
First off, like the sort of origin of this, I saw your article about talking about like e-commerce through multiplayer partnerships, and I thought it was really fascinating because it's sort of like the merging of sort of like best practices of worlds. Like for some reason, every B2B marketer is convinced that they're all incompetent and that D2C and e-commerce is at the forefront of everything, and that B2B is hopelessly behind, which is like hilarious when it's just different things you focus on. You learn different lessons at different things at different rates. But in like B2B partnerships and everything, like this is very established to this thing of like, if you sell to the same person I sell, like we should work together with that best of class story together, doing co-marketing, introducing each other. Like that's a pretty standard B2B play. But I think for e-commerce, like doing that same kind of thing and figuring out where it fits there is a lot newer and really interesting to explore how it will unfold into sort of like sustainable value. So that's a long-winded way to sort of introduce this, but I'd love to hear sort of like what is e-commerce through multiplayer partnerships.
Yeah, of course. I think it's funny you mentioned that, right? Yeah, because to your point, right, a good B2B SaaS company a mature stage B2B SaaS company will do like 40% of its sales through channel partnerships. So it's certainly not a wildly novel concept. But yeah, I mean, the basic idea of how I'm thinking about what I call multiplayer commerce is it's an answer to the sort of existential dilemma that the CAC is sort of just too damn high for a lot of brands right now to go it alone in paid marketing. I think one thing that is helpful to level set here is like one of the reasons I think this hasn't happened a ton in e-commerce is because for the last decade, if you were a subscale brand, if you were I'm going to argue even sub $100 million, like doing co-op and multiplayer partnerships and stuff was probably a distraction from what you needed to do to grow really fast, which was to get really, really good at either Facebook or Amazon, quite frankly. Like it sounds cynical, but in 2018, like the way that you grew fast is you got your when Shopify kind of made it reasonably easy to sort of launch a website and build the infrastructure and bones of e-commerce is you found a supplier, you negotiated your landed cost vis-a-vis price to get the highest gross margin possible, you got your 3PL shit in order, and then you got really, really good at Facebook ads, or in some cases Amazon PPC if you're an Amazon native brand. And anything else that you were doing was probably going to be a distraction. That's not really the case anymore, right? It is for many archetypes of brands, including many that we own, it's pretty hard to just sort of brute force paid marketing growth, which I think is actually a good thing for the industry. It means that the brands that really do well are going to be brands that are built by artisans and racconteurs and creatives, and not people that are just great at optimizing performance marketing, which is good. But it also means that, brands like ours have to get a lot more creative in how we think about working with each other to sort of offset the cost of customer acquisition. There are a number of...
Oh, I was just going to say that I remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago when they're talking about like the Shopify valuations of like Shopify as a whole, they're basically saying that like more than 50% of all traffic to Shopify stores was from Facebook paid ads. Like literally the entire feedback engine of Shopify was built on Facebook paid ads back in the day.
Yeah, and I think there was a thought 18 to 24 months ago that TikTok might kind of replace that one for one. TikTok's obviously been a pretty powerful channel, but it isn't Meta Instagram of 2017, 2020. Neither TikTok, the ads platform Spark or TikTok Shop. So yeah, I mean, what is essentially happening is I think savvy brands are realizing that to offset the cost of customer acquisition, it makes sense to explore different sort of collaborative and co-op opportunities sooner. The first wave of software companies that like aim to empower this were sort of in the vein of trying to help brands kind of become their own third-party marketplace light. So these are companies like Disco and Caro and Canal. Even Miracle has this functionality built in, which is a big sort of third-party marketplace SaaS platform. And these companies are awesome. We've worked with a couple of these companies. I know folks at a lot of these companies. They have 100% the right ethos. But unless you already have a lot of scale of traffic coming to your website, there's really only so much you can do, right? Because if you're a website that has 100,000 unique visitors that come per month, which is about what a sort of low eight-figure e-commerce brand might have, if you start selling complementary items that make sense with your products, it's a great customer experience. It'll probably increase AOV a little bit, but it's not going to move the needle at the scale that you need it to. You have to be a pretty large storefront before placing ads for other brands on your site or drop shipping other brands on your site really makes a major difference at scale. So what I've been thinking about is how can you take this like ethos of teaming up and partnership and bring it to actual customer acquisition, right? How can brands at the point of like paid marketing and paid customer acquisition work together to get sort of more beneficial unit economics? And there's a couple of different sort of things that we've been testing that I think are interesting here. The first obviously is affiliate, right? Affiliates that can buy paid traffic are sort of a gold mine for growth marketers, right? The ability to buy paid traffic, but have it work on a CPA or CAC basis is about as good as it gets. But conventionally, these kind of partnerships have been done sort of one-to-one between a brand and a publisher or a brand and affiliate, right? Sometimes it's a brand subsidizing the cost that an affiliate partner pays. Sometimes it's a brand just offering a really high commission. And then, the partner sort of translates that into a CPC model. And if the unit economics work, everybody wins. And that's been going on for years, decades, probably. But where I think it gets really interesting is a lot of the sort of content that does really well in a paid model are gift guides, advertorial products that feature 5 or 6 different things you can't miss on Amazon right now, or 7 gifts you should have gotten dad for Father's Day last week, right? There's no reason that brands can't kind of work together with affiliates on those, right? And if every brand is willing to set a CPA or a CAC goal that is palatable to them, and can sort of approach a publisher in unison, the amount of paid traffic that a publisher can buy potentially goes up by a lot if they can buy sort of a mass scale audience on Facebook. So this is a spot that I have been trying to spend a lot of time, because the reality is like affiliate is a big part of our business at Forum. It's north of 5% of the P&L. But like most affiliates and publishers over the years now have kind of seen our products. They've promoted them a couple times. They've tested the different creative angles that can work. And coming, in collaboration with other great like-minded brands, I think is one way that we can start to draw a little bit more growth out. It's a fairly tactical, still a very sort of performance marketing kind of heavy thing. But this is like one very sort of brass tacks multiplayer partnership that I think can work very, very well. And along the way, what I hope to find is like which other brands that sell products similar to ours do well in affiliate gift guides and things like that with us. And then I can start thinking about larger partnerships like, we have a couple of brands that have, hundreds of thousands of emails that have newsletters. Can we potentially start to run ads in each other's newsletters? Can we potentially start to share some first-party data to better target some of our, advertising campaigns? There's a lot more that I think we can do with other brands in this multiplayer partner model. But testing on these kind of affiliate buys is a pretty low-stakes, quick win way, to sort of, make some things happen.
Cool. And can you walk me through sort of how does this get bundled together to an affiliate? Like, how does this conversation start? What is the easy pitch for them to start understanding, like, what is the opportunity for them?
Yeah, at some level, like, all that I am doing as a brand is like a little bit of BD on a partner's behalf, because, what I honestly think one of the real advantages here is heads of growth in D2C know each other. Like, this is a very tight-knit community. There's like 500 of us on Twitter. We're all in the same Slack channels. We all go to the same like dinners once every couple of weeks. Like, it's a I think, unfortunately, pretty small and incestuous space. It could stand to be a lot more diverse than it is. But it means that like some publishers and affiliates, right, may know a couple people here or there, but there's a little bit of an in crowd that if we can kind of all come together and sort of pre-syndicate a strategy before going to a publisher or an affiliate, it just makes the process a lot easier. What we can essentially come with is sort of unified economics and unified testing models to a partner, right? It's almost a preset list of prospects that have all bought into a certain ethos. And really what that ethos is like, we're willing to offer commissions that are typically a lot higher than you would see in standard affiliate, but are still quite a bit lower than, the performance we're seeing in isolation on Facebook and other growth channels. And I think that can sort of de-risk creating a lot more content on our behalf from publishers. So I think that's sort of the sort of short-term benefit. There's, to be totally honest, no reason that like really smart, savvy affiliates couldn't sort of do this themselves, couldn't basically look across the ecosystem and say, I want to create a Father's Day gift guide, right? Here are 10 or 11 brands that I think are absolutely going to crush it, are going to be super high converting, great products. But I think like a consortium of brands coming together to different types of partners is a little bit of a new and novel concept, and hopefully one that gets attention. But yeah, I don't want to over like index. Like, I don't think this like specific concept of like collaborative affiliate arbitrage is that interesting, right? It's just like a combination of this like multiplayer ethos that's happening in commerce combined with a ton of old school affiliate tactics. What I actually think is more interesting is like brands like ours developing strategic partnerships with 5 or 10 other CPG brands that sell complementary but not competitive products that stretch across buying affiliate together, again, sharing audiences, running spots and emails, drop shipping each other's products on our websites. Like, I think it's the sort of holistic combo that is actually somewhat new and innovative and interesting here. I just center on the affiliate kind of component because I think it's interesting to your audience, and B, it's the one that can show results, I think, the quickest. A lot of these are kind of pie in the sky ideas. This is something that 5 smart CPG marketers together could go to an affiliate with next week.
No, I think it's a really good idea, and there's definitely lots of interesting ways to do it. And I think a lot of this boils down to sort of like how authentic can you make the roll up? Because it's just like if you try and force 5 brands that make no sense into a gift guide, it's going to be very like discordant. So I think that's a challenge, but I like that. Like if you're handing this on a plate to the affiliate, like that's like if it's one, it's really not worth them focusing. And like, maybe they're like, well, I'm already running stuff that makes lots of money. Like, why would I even bother testing one? But if you're rolling up with here's 5, here's a better offer, like payouts you can't be, like, that's a really compelling offer on that side. So I think it's very interesting. And then outside of affiliate, it's also very interesting for like, okay, I'm speaking to my audience, like, let me release my gift guide where I'm talking about like, here, like for the summer looks, like here's the different like top 5 looks with all the accessories, and the accessories are coming from like your partner brands and stuff like that. Like that's a very authentic way that you're showing like how the clothes that one brand has can fit naturally with these other brands and how you get a cool look together. I think there's really interesting stuff there where it's like you're creating content that lets your audience know about, hey, I should buy this clothes here, while still cross-promoting other stuff that naturally fits with it. And like it's cohesive. It's not just trying to sell them on it. It's actually like adding value.
I think the test on if it's authentic, the way that I've sort of thought about this, so I will say I think there's 2 categories. There are, especially in the Amazon space, I think there are some cases where somewhat disjointed entities can do reasonably well together if they're just like super high converting products on Amazon, because there is sort of a class of affiliates and buyers in the Facebook ecosystem that just do like kind of scattershot Amazon affiliate content. But that's sort of its own esoteric thing. I think more broadly, like the test that I think about on if someone can be a good sort of partner growth brand across different vectors is like, we have loyalty programs for a couple of our brands. Would our customers want to use their loyalty points to shop this complementary brand? I think is a really, really good litmus test, for this. So like, to use an example outside of our ecosystem, right? Honest Co is a company that has a pretty robust loyalty program. I would love to use my Honest Co points to buy Bobby infant formula, right? Those are just, I think 2 brands with a similar ethos. Honest Company does not make a European style formula, so nothing is competitive there. But rather than use my Honest Company points to buy whatever baby skincare accessory or thing they're pushing on me that I don't need, I would love to use it to buy from 3 or 4 other sort of parenting or baby brands that have a similar view of the world, but other products. And I think that's the sort of like level of cohesion among brands that you kind of need. I will say, though, it doesn't always have to be obvious, right? Like you just sort of have to be targeting a similar customer and a similar sort of like persona and worldview. Like I think Ridge Wallets is one company that I know has been running ads in their newsletters for like-minded brands. And it's not all like, other kind of direct men's accessories or, somewhat survivalist kind of companies. So I think there are like, it comes down to like what, if you really, really know your customer well from both the demographic and psychographic level, what else is it that they want to shop, right? If you imagine that your product was in a Nordstrom or a Target, what else do they buy when they're in there? I think is a good litmus test on top of this kind of like loyalty program framework.
Yeah, I love this. And I think it's super interesting to be building like loyalty and et cetera. But I feel like most e-commerce brands are extremely bad at this. So I'd love to talk about how this actually like comes together, because from my experience, I mean, I have a toddler, as we talked about before we started this, And whenever I buy clothes for him, I immediately get like 6 emails in a row somehow in the first like hour about like different products and different brands, etc. And I always just end up unsubscribing from that. And the entire chance to build me into someone who like has like brand affinity is completely lost in a situation. So like, what are you seeing for like the companies that are actually like, hey, you like my product, like let me build this relationship further because you already trust me as like, you know, my product's good?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, I think, especially to our point on like, how do you maximize the efficacy of retention marketing?
Mm-hmm.
There's no one right way. Like, yeah, I think I brought them up before, but True Classic is a $400 million company, I think, in just 4 years. They send an ungodly amount of email and SMS as well. If you sign up for their SMS list, it's like almost as bad as donating to a political candidate's campaign with the level of kind of content that they send you. And some of it is like, I mean, True Classic does some great creative and they have some really, really interesting stuff, but some of it is like super reductionist 20% off sales. And they're like clearly testing every type of cart abandonment solution out there. And it's this very, very like sort of algorithmically optimized, send them as much as possible thing. And it works. By contrast, one of the other interesting examples that was going around sort of D2C, Twitter and LinkedIn this week is Skims, Kim Kardashian's brand. Their like post-purchase email doesn't have any sort of like upsell cart recommendations. They don't build you into this like wildly aggressive flow. As a matter of fact, the only thing that I think you can do in their Shopify post-purchase email is actually edit the information in your confirmation for 20 minutes, which is done through a Shopify app whose name I can't remember. But it got them a lot of good publicity because people were like, I don't want a million other X, but 1 in 10 Shopify orders I make, I fat finger something. And this is like a much, much better customer experience. Unfortunately, most data that I have seen generally suggests that on sort of a myopic ARPU, average revenue per user basis, most D2C companies could stand to send more email and SMS. Like, I kind of think of this as like the way sales development works in SaaS. Like, everybody calls out SDRs and everybody says they want, you know, way less but higher quality personalized messaging. And then when most companies amp up their outreach, they see outsized results. There's unfortunately a little bit of the same dynamic in some corners of e-commerce. So I think like by and large, you know, most of the really, really good retention marketers do send a lot of email, but I do think there's a lane for a couple of companies to buck the trend. And really, really like purposely opt out of sending a lot of the transactional emails that could drive results. Purposely opt out of, you know, sending you 4 different recommendations in cart to present one really good bespoke one from a partner brand, or like really, you know, leave a little bit of money on the table, sort of short term to kind of build some of this brand affinity, because, you know, this sort of Skims example, just the sort of good press that they got from their customers on, you know, Facebook and other channels probably far outweighs the money they would have made from jamming a couple more products down your throat. So, funny story on this. I won't say the brand because I don't know if he's comfortable with me sharing it, but I met with the founder of a brand about a month ago, a brand that's very, very prominent in Walmart. They do well on Amazon. They sell a number of like home essentials and are sort of well into the tens of millions. They are sitting on a database of more than 1 million emails and send 0 promotional email because the founders just fundamentally don't believe in it. And they're like just starting to think about like, okay, we, you know, at some level, I think they kind of realize it's a little crazy that they have all of these customer emails and their customers want to hear from them. And they have all these kind of loyal brand evangelists and they send them nothing. But like, if they are going to start sending, you know, sort of the standard marketing emails that 99.9% of brands send, the bar they have for quality is so high that they haven't yet sort of landed on what the concept should be that they start emailing their customers. And it's like, it's hard for someone like me to keep a straight face when I hear stuff like this, right? Like, like I can't imagine, right, running a brand of this scale and just leaving so much kind of low hanging fruit revenue on the table as they have. But I actually think as like performance marketing channels and sort of the commoditization of commerce reverses, I think more brands with an ethos like this will actually start to do really well. So it's a long-winded way of me kind of saying like, you get a lot of email because in 8 or 9 times out of 10, it's probably the right thing for a brand to do. But there are some really interesting kind of contrarian thinking marketers out there that are, sort of bucking the trends and doing some much more interesting things in how they communicate with customers.
Yeah, I think those things are always a challenge of like, it's where I really distrust just looking at analytics without like putting thought into like what it means. I always think of like the one that is like the example that is permanently in my brain was just like the like CEO of Groupon being that like when they were testing out going from like 1 deal a day to 2 deals a day, all of the data said 2 deals had better engagement, made way more money, had such a better response. But he was like, the day we made that decision, like that was the sort of like death of Groupon, because like, yes, it was really good, but it killed the specialness where it was like, you really wanted to know that deal because it was the one deal you would see. So the data said that, but like it like eroded the brand so much. And I feel like there must be a middle ground opportunity, because I mean, the reason people go to Wirecutter is like there's so little trust in the world of like, what product should I buy? Like, you can't just search for it anymore. You can't trust anything. So it's like, Wirecutter is going to be mostly right when they suggest this. But I feel like there's so much opportunity for like e-commerce brands to do the same thing, which is like, hey, like, you trust my design. I mean, I like the toddler clothes because what I think about, like, you trust my design sense. You trust our clothes. Like, but we only can release maybe like 100 per season, and once you buy, you already probably went through all their clothes to buy it,
Yep.
and you're not gonna buy again. And so those 5 emails are just annoying because you already look through that stuff and you don't care. But if they were like, hey, like, you really like our brand, you trust our sense, here are some other products from other brands that just released that we really like, that we think is exciting, like, that is like a perfect thing of like, yes, it's an upsell and it's completely authentic and adds value, because I didn't look through that stuff. I looked through your stuff, and now I'm ready to, like, I'm done with that for the next season until you release the next set of clothes.
1,000%. And I think that you're going to see that. I mean, we're starting to do it at Forum. We, are starting to think about where can we more interestingly sort of communicate with our customers and highlight things beyond and within our portfolio together. And then we also have a standalone media venture, which I could talk at length about and won't here. But you'll see it more broadly across the ecosystem. Like, this is a spot where there are some interesting SaaS companies building, because there are a lot of challenges around, operationalizing this. Like, it's easy to do 1 or 2 deals where you drop ship a product on each other's site, or you run an ad in each other's email newsletters. But if you're really going to start sharing data amongst brands, especially brands that have hundreds of thousands of customers, being able to do that I think going to require an ecosystem SaaS being built. But I think one of the things you said is really interesting. Like, one of the things that goes around LinkedIn, Twitter, the world every once in a while is like, why isn't there in Amazon that instead of having, tens of millions of SKUs, has a few 100,000 sort of highly curated ones? And it's a good question. I think there's a lot of like economy of scale, network effect reasons why that doesn't exist. But I think it will exist in the next decade. I think these somewhat sort of bespoke, artisan, curated marketplaces that are still pretty large, but are, 9-figure companies and not multi-billion-dollar companies will exist. And I actually think they might, like, 5-10 years ago, you would have had to raise venture capital and build this like massive top-down marketplace. Not too dissimilar from what like Open Store and some other people are trying to do. But I actually think this might happen bottoms up. And like, one kind of example I keep coming back to is, more and more really good D2C companies have a, true sustainability pledge, whether they're certified B Corps or not. More and more sort of, D2C companies are offsetting a certain amount of carbon emissions, getting certified that they do so. I think a really, really interesting sort of sustainability friendly marketplace might come bottoms up from one of these brands getting, one of these sort of B Corp or eco-friendly brands getting very, very large, and then starting to bring other sort of sustainable kind of climate friendly brands onto their marketplace. Because I think that the challenge of building sort of any net new curated marketplace experience is nobody trusts the brand, right? This is why like Verishop struggled. Like Verishop tried to be this digital Nordstrom. Nobody had fucking heard of Verishop. But if it starts off of the basis of a single brand that consumers trust, and then, additional kind of complementary brands get built up alongside it, I think one of the kind of great winners in commerce of the next decade will actually be built in that model. It's something I've thought a little bit about at Forum. Our brands are, while collectively we are a large company, I don't know that our largest brand is big enough to spend a lot of time on this right now, but I think that will be an really, really interesting sort of, like I said, bespoke vertical marketplace that it is built in this kind of model.
I feel like it has to be that way though, because the problem with top down is like we've just seen that if you take VC money, like you have to keep growing at a crazy fast rate because they need a return on their investment. So like the Etsy's of the world, there was a period of time where Etsy was really delightful and people loved it. And now Etsy just shoots themselves in the foot all the time where it's just like all cheap, like knockoff products. And like people don't trust that they can find anything good or that it will be handcrafted, etc. So it's a good example of where it is totally, if you go the VC route, it's so hard to say no to anything. And you have to say no to so many things to really have a marketplace that people are like, this adds value to me. Like, again, like I think Wirecutter is just the best example of this because even Wirecutter, like some of the trust is going down, but you just trust it more than the alternatives. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, I agree. It's always been funny, right? There's been another one of the kind of like tropes of, I feel like there are a few tropes of the internet. One is like, why is there not this bespoke Amazon? Two is like, why can't I pay 3 cents for a newspaper article? Which I could talk for about 3 hours about why micropayments aren't going to work in media, someone with that media background. But I think one of the third ones is like, why is Wirecutter not a marketplace, right? Like, why aren't any of these sort of, affiliate publishers or like top tier commerce publishers, why aren't they great retailers, right? They have all of this top of funnel attention and demand. Like, why not ship the products too? Hearst is obviously actually trying to do this, right? They are sort of building a marketplace product around some of their titles. I actually think it's more likely that it goes the other way. I think it's more likely that great brands finally break through and build media companies on the retailer side. A couple of reasons for this. I mean, one, unfortunately, is just the core update on Google has sort of changed the world a little bit. And
you need to have your own audience.
It's become clear sort of 3 months in now that Google still likes the style of article that a lot of big content commerce publishers write. They just don't love all the affiliate links and display ads. Brands have the luxury of creating the same kind of content, but not having to monetize it, which is, a bit of an unfair advantage in this vein. But also, like, I mean, from a, in either event, right, whether it's a publisher that's going to have to get really, really good at selling products or a retailer that's going to have to get good at content, someone's going to have to do something that is so far outside of their core competence. And if there's something I've learned coming to e-commerce after almost a decade in media and software is like everything you thought you knew kind of goes out the window when you're dealing with physical, tangible goods. You're actually dealing with holding inventory and having to get products from point A to point B. It's just a totally different world. Whereas I think, really, really smart, savvy retailers, if they find just one or two of the right people with a journalism background who really treat content as sacrosanct, I think they can build some pretty powerful media operations, whether they do it as a affiliate heavy blog, or if you do it in email, or whatever it may be, or something like what Best Buy is doing, where they're partnering with CNET to run some of their retail media inventory. So I think it's been a lot of false starts, but I don't think you'll see a Wirecutter type company really, really excel as a commerce marketplace. But I do think you'll see a large retailer or brand launch a very, very non-trivial media operation in the next, sort of few years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a good point. And sort of, I mean, on that note, you mentioned that sort of like Forum Brands has like their own like media efforts, like just sort of like, what is that? Like, how is it? how does it like reach people? Like sort of like any sort of like details of sort of like what has happened there?
Yeah, so the project literally launched today. We're
Congrats.
not crazy public with what we're doing, but here's what I can basically share. The brand is called Take Care. It is all around kind of caregiving in all of its forms. One of the things that we took a look at the media landscape, and one of the things that we thought was incredibly undercovered was sort of the multimodal nature of caregiving. If you think about it, like a lot of people that are sort of roughly our age are parents. A lot of them are starting to think about how do they care for aging relatives, even if it's not fully top of mind yet. It's sort of becoming a little bit more top of mind. There's a lot of thought about how do people incorporate pragmatic self-care routines. How do I sort of consume consciously, right? So we thought about this, and we came up with this concept for a publication that would cover caregiving in all of its forms. Part of that is we wanted to create a media asset that would be interesting to the kind of unified Forum Brands customer, who is, like I said, usually a millennial and Gen X mom. But she may have bought a diaper caddy from us one week, and then organic tampons from us the next week, and then a stretch mark prevention cream the week after, and then a retractable dog leash for her dog. All four of those things are kind of different verticals, but we thought this sort of theme of caregiving could apply pretty well across all of the different audiences for our brand. So the way that we're bringing the publication to market is we're testing it on a subset of our subscribers for one of our brands today. If that test goes well, we will start to bring over subscribers from some of our other brands, and then we'll actually start selling advertising inventory to other complementary like-minded brands next month. So the project is live. We've only published one edition of the email newsletter. It's at take-care.beehive.com. We'll be moving to its own domain called readtakecare.com next month. But assuming this goes as we think it will, we have big plans for this as a media company. We intend to not only support it with advertising, but we intend to do some custom research around different issues facing caregivers, fully reported articles, things like that. So not meant to be sort of a Trojan horse to grow our brands, meant to be sort of a standalone media business within the portfolio. And again, I think you'll see a lot more. Like, I don't think we'll be alone in launching projects like this. The time is right. Brands have some of the most engaged vertical niche media audiences out there. And there are still so many undercovered, like mass consumer media is about as saturated as it could be, but there is still so many undercovered little niche kind of, media areas. Especially if you think about like, sort of fan enthusiast communities. I think a lot of that can be built off of an e-commerce brand's audience. So yeah, it's an exciting experiment. Like I think we'll know over the next couple months if how well it's working for us. But in any event, I think the trend of brands launching media companies is not going away. I mean, even this week, right? I wrote a big piece on how Amazon and Meta's growth is existentially tied to sort of Chinese brands and not American SMB anymore. I ran that piece in Sherwood News, which is owned by Robinhood, right?
Yeah.
Robinhood is a stock trading platform, but the level of sort of editorial kind of support that I got at Sherwood News, I worked with 3 editors that had all come from prominent publications. They ran my piece through 4 rounds of edits. They copy edited it, and they fact checked it. And this is a media company that's owned by a stock exchange. There will be more kind of examples of great media coming out of non-traditional places, I think, in the sort of next few years. What that means for brand side marketers, I don't know, right? Like, I think there was a great article in Modern Retail this week about, like, do CMOs have to start thinking about Substacks now, like, to spend dollars? Yeah, I think they do. And I think pretty soon they're going to have to start thinking about, other brand-owned media kind of places that they can partner with, to the end of getting their brand in front of, like-minded customers.
Yeah, I think the other challenge is sort of like, how do you get in front of that audience? Like, just how you get in front of it, because it kind of sucks that all like Substacks are like emails. Like, there's only so many emails you can take from a thing, and it's just like, it is annoying that like we keep going back to like email and maybe like I think podcasts, like I think that one's proven here to stay, but it like social media like kind of wiping out so much of the other places these things used to get seen. It's a bummer that there's not like a good go-to hub outside of email right now. And I think that's the other piece is like, where do I go to like read this on a like daily or weekly basis and consume it like as a quiet thing in the morning?
Yeah, I think the mistake though that a lot of brand marketers are making is thinking of Substacks as emails. They are myopically now. But like if I were a brand, in the CPG, in the like food and beverage space, I would do anything I could right now to sponsor Emily Sundberg's newsletter, which is Feed Me. If you think of that as like an email, you're never going to see returns that make sense. But if you think
Yeah.
of like Emily Sundberg as sort of a new age culture tastemaker for food and beverage, which I think she really is, um, I think if you were able to kind of, even on a paid sort of advertorial kind of model, get her to cover your nascent and up and coming food and beverage brand, I think it would have sort of outsized results. So I think it's weird, right? It's strange. I think like a lot of what I feel like I've talked about for the last 45 minutes, like if you're a head of growth or head of marketing, you're like, really, that's where you're going to spend your time right now? Like that's what I got to focus on, these weird like esoteric partnership ideas. And I think the answer is you got to at least devote a decent chunk of your time to it. Because I think that the last big thing I would sort of say is like, there is a lot of doom and gloom in the commerce industry around sort of deteriorating performance on Facebook and Amazon, arrival of Temu, what's going to become of TikTok with regulation, like all these big sort of macro things. Because like the easy one-to-one growth channels that can scale are sort of, getting dialed down. But I actually think what kind of comes out in its place is going to be a lot healthier and a lot more fun. Like brands that have to grow not through just brute force paid marketing, but building great products and brands, but then having to patch together a bunch of weird kind of disjointed strategies, whether it's sponsoring a Substack, finding 4 or 5 other brands to promote in their post-purchase upsell, launching a media company light. Like the kind of brands that come out of, I think, the next 5 to 10 years are just going to have to be like a little bit bolder and weirder and more out there. Which I think will just be net good for e-commerce because, we have most things we need in society at this point, right? Like those just pure products are covered. So if you're going to start a new brand, it's got to kind of like, fill a clear niche in the world. It's got to have a clear race on Tetra, as I say often. And I think the sort of new growth playbooks, these sort of new multiplayer partnership, both based growth playbooks will benefit sort of weirder, funkier and more audacious brands that have a purpose. So I'm net excited about it. Again, as a practitioner, I'm sort of navigating the change. Do I wish that straightforward affiliate partnerships based on SEO Google traffic were working as well as they did 2 years ago? Yeah, I do. But if that's not going to happen, like I'll find some, 5 other people that I can collaborate with and do, sort of more bespoke multiplayer affiliate stuff and, ditto that for every other sort of channel that we advertise in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right. And also just like these things always have silver linings. Like people like there will be some brands that come out of this that probably become way more powerful than the last set because again, like if you have loyalty and audience, like people identify with your brand identity, like it's so incredibly powerful. The amount of things that you can bring to them that like they're happy. Like, I mean, I feel like most of the products I bought in maybe last half decade of like I heard about them on a podcast where like I trust the source, I trust the reason it drove me there, and like that like authenticity transferred to me. And I mean, especially on the B2B SaaS, like authenticity and happy customers is just like unbeatable for growth. So I'm sure we'll find a nice happy medium where this makes like the next big players in e-commerce.
Cool.
Any last takeaways of people, how they can learn more about you and Forum Brands and your new publication?
Yeah, so forumbrands.com is the holding company website if you actually want to see the set of brands we own and if any of them look like, if you're another sort of marketer, growth marketer, brand marketer listening and wants to kind of work with us. Mike M at Foreign Brands is my email, at Mallazzo on Twitter. I'm sure my LinkedIn will be shared in this sort of webinar. And then my newsletter is United States of Amazon. So that's usa.beehive.com is my personal newsletter. And that is all about sort of the cultural and political implications of Amazon taking over the zeitgeist. So what I try to do is analyze sort of bigger macro trends in America through the lens of Amazon. So that one is not actionable at all in any way, shape, or form if you're a marketer. Sometimes I republish columns I write elsewhere there, but in general, this is a little bit more of a kind of fun read. But yeah, would be honored to have anybody read. I respond to every piece of reader email I get. So, but yeah, again, the none of what I spoke about today here is sort of strictly academic. We are in both our affiliate program and with our email newsletter and in a couple of places on our websites looking for other brand partners to collaborate with. If you go to mylola.com, you can see that we have an interesting partnership with Awkward Essentials on our website. I will leave it to viewers to figure out what Awkward Essentials sells. So yeah, these are all like real kind of tactical things we're doing. So if anything that I rambled on about here was interesting to you, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. This is super fascinating.
All right. Take care, Michael. Always fun.